Okay, what am I going to watch tonight? Finish Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Haven't started Fallout yet. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Fall Guy. Available to. What the What's going on, everybody? I am Winston A. Marshall, aka the Swaggy Blurred, and this is a thread. That is what I'm calling this series when I am taking some time to talk and chat about things that are going on in the news, commentary that I have about stuff, my thoughts and theories on things. Thread, you see that on Twitter all the time, stuff like that on threads, if you will. Now, this one in particular is very interesting. Because as you just saw in my little cold open there, I actually read in the news yesterday that Fall Guy is now, as of today, available on VOD, both for rent and to purchase, and will very shortly thereafter be on the subscription services to be able to watch. It has been 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since the Fall Guy released on, I believe that was May 4th. We're already at it being released on streaming. Now, hearing all of that, my initial thought just goes to the fact that the box office is dying. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous when you consider that the top 5 movies of 2023 brought in roughly about $5.22 billion alone. And that accounts just for Barbie, the Super Mario Brothers movie, Oppenheimer, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and Fast 10. But see, the problem is, that's actually a downward trend. See, in 2021, the box office top 5 saw $5.12 billion, whereas 2022 saw $6.69 billion. And that's a far cry from pre-pandemic numbers of $7.1 billion and $8.17 billion in 2018 and 2019, respectively. So the immediate thought goes to, okay, so what's the reasoning for the box office disappearing? I mean, we know obviously the box office came to a complete halt in 2020 because of the pandemic, and it took time to rev back up. But why are we seeing a little bit of a downward trend in 2023? And then now in 2024, we're seeing highly, acclaimed movies just not doing very well. Well, it's not that people aren't spending money. I mean, the video game industry in 2023 was a $57.2 billion industry, and that included the top 5 AAA games there being Hogwarts Legacy, Modern Warfare 3, Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 5, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and Diablo 4, just to name a few. So, they're putting out high-quality games, and I know there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen to the video game industry, but $57.2 billion is a sizable amount of money, relatively speaking. The other thing that pops into my mind is it was the season of the woman, of the girl power in general, in that you saw 2 of the largest tours of all time happen in Taylor Swift's Eras Tour and Beyonce's Renaissance Tour. Now, Taylor Swift, now from Forbes and Pollstar, based on $17.32 million in ticket revenue, estimates that Taylor Swift earned for each of her first 60 Eras dates a current total tour gross at $1.44 billion. And by the end of 2024, since she is continuing her tour this year, is expected to have brought in an astronomical $2.165 billion. Now, while Beyonce didn't put up those kind of numbers, she still did something absolutely insane, as Live Nation announced that the superstar's global trek earned more than $579 million worldwide, with 2.7 million fans attending across 56 dates in 39 cities. Now, if you throw in there the fact that with the narrowest of margins, that the Swift's Eras Tour roughly ties Barbie for number 1, but if you include her money revenue from the Eras movie, actually is higher than Barbie as far as what it brought in the box office. And then Renaissance sits right at number 8 as far as the top box office in movies. Just the Renaissance Tour. You can throw the movie in there if you want to, but it is technically sitting at number 8 as far as gross, if you were to include that in the movie box office, which is absolutely insane. So you're getting a little bit of, other mediums, other forms of entertainment that people are investing their time and energy into. But the other major point that's happening, that's affecting movies in the box office, is streaming. It's hard to pinpoint, but the estimates of revenue from SVOD, or subscription video on demand, sits at around $37.1 billion in the US alone. And according to Forbes, is estimated to pull a $43.97 billion in 2024. And finally, the SVOD industry currently is valued at an astonishing $544 billion. So the immediate answer as to what's happening with the box office, why are these movies not taking off, is a number of things. You have people being distracted by other forms of media. I mean, we just talked about video games and, these two major world tours. And you had other major acts. You had Harry Styles was on tour, Bad Bunny was on tour, Drake was on tour, The Weeknd. Large acts were going on tour last year that also brought in an absurd amount of money. You also have the fact that both last year into this year, you had a lot of, major political things happening. Inflation has been absolutely crazy in the U.S. You've seen a number of elections happening around the world. It happens all the time, but it seems like very controversial ones. Like there was the Argentinian president running around with a chainsaw, ultimately won. That was like a whole thing. Go look it up. But you've got all sorts of situations where people were very much distracted because real world situations were popping off. I mean, obviously everything happening, in the Middle East right now between Israel and Gaza. That is a major key point that a lot of people found themselves being stuck on. We're about to go through an election here. We're in an election year right now, and it's tied to God knows how many different issues as far as what's going on here in the U.S. So there's a lot of people who are very upset. There's a lot of people who don't really have time for the distractions and whatnot because they're just trying to figure out how to live. Those are all major reasons, but that seems counterintuitive because, people look to movies, they look to TV to escape. They look to that to get out of their head and to not worry about this kind of stuff. But I think the other major thing that we're not talking about as to why the box office suffered and why it is suffering is we just came out of a strike year. And on top of that, the industry has been pushing streaming so incredibly hard. So if you think about it, back in 2020 and in 2021, the world was in panic and in disarray. And so because the movie industry the studios were scared and they were already gearing up their streaming services as is, all of a sudden you got situations where, Warner Brothers, Universal, they were doing either a same day or 2 week or 1 week release window from box office at the movies once the theaters were back open to streaming directly. And it led to a lot of controversy, including Scarlett Johansson actually suing Disney for potential money lost for doing that. You saw Christopher Nolan, who had been a longtime partner with Warner Brothers, deciding to pack up shop and leave and actually take what ended up being almost $1 billion movie over to Universal and became a huge hit for them. And now they're doing everything they can to try and court him back. It was a move that you understand why the studios were doing it, but you kind of opened up Pandora's box now, because at what point does somebody who has, a family, let's call it an average family of four, two parents and two kids, and you go to the movies, just off tickets, you're looking at somewhere between $75 and $100, depending on where you live. And how old the kids are. That doesn't throw in parking if that's a situation. That doesn't throw in any snacks or food or drinks or anything like that. Or if you're like me and every other black person I know, you really don't worry about that. You just bring in whatever you want. You just need to hide it well. But that being said, it is not cost effective to go to the movies anymore unless you have something like an AMC A-list, Movie Pass, when that used to exist. I know Regal's got some sort of system set up now. Unless you have something like that, it's not very cost efficient to go to the movies. It doesn't help that you have a number of people that mainly kind of in the Gen Z era that I've seen talk on this, but I've seen people do this across all generations, where people are happy to just talk up a storm, to pull out their phones, to, when the Minions movie came out, you had all these dudes in suits running around. Let alone, I understand Eras, Tour, and Renaissance movies were meant to be sing-alongs. But some people don't necessarily want to do all that too. And when stuff like that happens in movies, you know, you don't necessarily want to go and be bothered with all that when you can watch it from the comfort of your own home. So I think it is a multitude of things that are happening. And again, I brought up the strike. I said that very quickly, but you got to understand all the productions being off base. A lot of stuff didn't get released last year, got pushed, all that kind of stuff. Rewrites happen. Every time a strike happens, there is a momentary dip, not only in what is released, but sometimes in the quality of things that are released, especially because then there's a scramble to try and figure stuff out last minute, both before the strikes start and immediately after they finish. So I do think that we will see an upward tick of the box office over the next year, but I genuinely think unless something majorly changes with how streamers are treated and you don't do something like this with the Fall Guy, you're going to end up in a situation where ultimately we are going to lose the movie theaters, which would be a shame because there is something very special about going to the movies. There's something very special about going to a comedy that everybody's in there laughing together over. You know what I mean? That everybody is watching Bridesmaids and, you know, all of a sudden everybody is, you know, throwing up and shitting in the dress room and Maya Rudolph is in the middle of the street pooping herself.
It happened.
There's something to be said about being there for when Avengers Endgame happens and On Your Left happens and everybody in the theater is losing their mind. These are all things that theaters are so special and we need that. I think we need it more than ever right now because we are in such a state of disarray where the world's social contract seems to be eroding. It's not just here in America, though it is pretty bad here in America right now. It does feel like everybody is very angry and nobody really likes each other. But it seems to be kind of happening around the world where everybody is really at each other's throats right now. And so many countries are isolating themselves over the last few years. I mean, obviously the Brexit situation, Argentina is doing something like that. You're seeing a lot of people trying to kind of close themselves off. And I feel like as you saw, the camaraderie that came out of all the people that were into Barbie, you know, the sheer number of people that were into that movie, what you saw for the, I don't feel this way about Avatar, but the people that love Avatar the way that they do, you know, what I'm guessing is going to happen with Deadpool and Wolverine, we need this kind of connection. And it's not always just about the major blockbusters. I spoke on this so much last year about how impressed I was with The Blackening, which had a $5 million budget and busted out 15 mil. You tripled your investment. That's absolutely incredible. And from the time that I went, it was the same kind of community where things would happen in the movie. And because it's geared toward a black audience, black people were shouting stuff out together and having a good time and laughing and talking about it and spreading the word. That's the kind of thing that we need right now. I think you saw that even though it was a rap beef and it got a little messy at points. And if you want to know more about that, you should check out my video on that, which I talked about. Did the rap beef get a little messy? A little too messy. But that was something that kind of brought people together, debating about who was the better of the MCs, who dropped better tracks, people dancing and coming up with all sorts of memes and stuff. That's that type of thing that we need to rebuild community, because at this particular juncture, it doesn't feel like we are much of a community. I think the reason why I have spoken on multiple times that I prefer the week-to-week model versus the binge model for TV is because it allows us to have that moment to all talk about it together. If you didn't catch it, you know, the first day or couple days that it came out, don't worry, episode 2 or episode 3 will be next week, and by that time you would have caught up and we're all like, oh my god, is Onslaught coming to X-Men 97? Like, that's the big thing that we're talking about. It feels like the closer we get to the idea of movie theaters going away, I feel like we're getting closer to the idea of our ability to truly connect with each other. I think that's a very major conduit in which we've been able to communicate and talk with each other. Will start to dissipate. I don't think that means the end of society. I'm not trying to say, you know, whoa, yay, the apocalypse is coming.
The world passes away. I am Apocalypse! Look upon the future and tremble!
Though Apocalypse is coming to season 2 of X-Men 97.
So much death.
It's more from the standpoint of, I don't want us to lose the idea of us having a community. I think there has been a lot of divisiveness, even amongst movies and TV shows at this point, where everybody wants to argue something's too woke or something is, too much DI in it, or, it didn't see enough diversity, or, this is actually really offensive to a group. Why is it offensive? Is it offensive because it actually is taking horrible stereotypes and just shitting on somebody? Is it offensive because it's a joke you just didn't like? Is it offensive because it's women leading it?
If you watch Harley Quinn.
No!
Have you seen the show?
Oh, God, no. It's just another heavy-handed female empowerment story where the true villain is the quote-unquote patriarchy.
There's a point at which we have to also take a second and save our actual anger and vitriol for things that we see in movies and in TV, for things that are actually harmful and offensive. Save it for the type of stuff that is genuinely eroding our ability to communicate with each other and what feels like our connection with each other. And if we lose the movie theaters, I get really scared that art, media that has bonded us together for centuries, we have to protect art and our ability to share it as a community at all costs. Because the minute we don't have something like that to bond us together, we're nothing more than political ideals yelling at each other. And all I know is we're not going to get by as humanity if we don't find some common ground and something to laugh, cry, and to share a beer to talk over. But what do you think, man? Do you think that I'm just kind of blowing this out of proportion? Do you think movie theaters will be completely fine? And this was just a down year because of the strike. Do you think the movie theaters are in trouble? How many subscription services are you a part of? I want to know all of it, man. Comments and likes and all that stuff are super important for the algorithm, and I'm trying to build this out. So do me a favor and please be sure to go down and tell me what you think on the subject. But on top of that, man, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Let me know that you are enjoying this content. You hit that notification bell to tell you every time I put something out. Now, obviously, X-Men 97 is already over, so there's no more reviews to do, but I am instead going to be doing another video about the future of X-Men 97 and what I think is going to come for season 2, and what does Disney need to do now that Bo DeMeo is gone. Should he be brought back? Where should they move going forward? These are all questions that I'm going to talk about. Thank you so much for spending the time kicking it with me and talking about where we're going as an industry and as a society. I'll see you on the next thread, y'all. Peace.